Hi, it's Thursday, 30th of April 2020, and it's yellow rhythmic human in the Mayan calendar. In astrology, we have Sun in Taurus, and we have Moon in Leo waxing at 4 degrees. We're in between the new moon in Taurus and the full moon in Scorpio. It's the Wesak moon, the full moon in Scorpio. It's the Buddha process time. And all of these terms that I'm going to be saying, please do Google them and check them out for yourself. This is part 1 of 2 videos. And so I'm going to talk about a process today. If you follow my blog, flowwithjo.com, you will see that I posted a video earlier this week which is connected to huge astrological events, stargates going on at the moment. And so using the Mayan language, using the codes can be confusing for people who aren't aware of that particular language. And my blog really is about exploring this because I've been doing this work for 9 years now. My passion is about connecting to people who are ready to do this work. This work is profound, it's deep, it's key to this transition time. So if you're watching this, I'm guessing that this is relevant for you. In another framework, this is about doing the great work. This is about doing the inner work and taking it to a whole different level. So this is not just the intellect. This is about alchemy. This is about transformation. This is about becoming free. In terms of shamanic framework, this is key to the Mayan, key to Carlos Castaneda, key to tensegrity movement, key to being the individual who is ready to go very deep and to connect and shape their destiny by understanding key frameworks to use. I'm in the process of writing an ebook at this time. And again, these processes are very complex. So it is difficult to put them into simplistic, plain language, but I'm going to do my best. So this part 1, I'm going to really just focus on not using Mayan language, galactic language. In part 2, I will attach the language to the framework. So whichever way you're coming from this, generally people are attracted to this Mayan shift if they are working with me, if they are in my circle of influence. So I'm going to try and do it all ways round. So to begin with, I'm going to start with a simple framework, and it is all about the individual. Know thyself, know what your patterns are, know that you are an energetic holograph, a story, and you have the ability to transform yourself if you learn how to do it and if you have the discipline to do it. That is one of the key, most important things. If you have the courage to look and feel all your past story so far on planet Earth, to understand it and to heal it, then you have what it takes to do this process, and the rewards are amazing. It becomes easier over time. So I was writing these last night. Comes in when it comes in. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to say to you, this process, you start with the end in mind. So you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to have a perfect template. You don't need to have your whole life mapped out. You can have some very general, abstract ideas, concepts, ways of being that you want to create for yourself as a conscious creator. And this is what it's all about. It's about having a goal. Okay, so you can be as detailed as you wish about the goal, but as I've said, all that you need to do is focus on what you want to create. And if you think you don't know that right now, you can start with the opposite of that, is what do I have now that is not feeling good for me? And then write the opposite of that. Okay, so start wherever you are. And so, for example, I've written down here, personally, what I always work with is I want to be emotionally free. So in other words, I want to be in my centre. I don't want to be getting emotionally hijacked all the time into drama and other people's drama. I want to be free of drama. I want to be happy as much as I can. And I want to be in balance emotionally. So I want to be accessing all my emotions. I want to be authentic. I want to be, as I said, in my centre. I want to be in loving relationship with myself and with other people. I want to be in respectful relationship with myself and other people. So when things arise, as they do in everyday life, that don't match that experience, so for example, the experience that we're going through at the moment is unprecedented. So it's going to bring up times when we don't feel good. It's going to bring up times from the past when we've had a similar experience. And even though we might not be consciously aware of it, it will be there underneath. We will be feeling these feelings. We will be having these experiences. And so often, to begin with, we can have lots of different ways of not dealing with it. You know, that's one of the common things on planet Earth is we don't deal with it. We avoid it. We use coping mechanisms. We use substances, for example, to take the edge off. So people often use alcohol, food, emotional eating, distractions, watch TV. Don't go there, don't talk about it. And all this is perfectly understandable and natural until we learn how to actually work with what's coming up instead of avoiding it. And this is the process I'm talking about. So as we're going through this process, you can handle whatever life throws at you, and you can also be authentic and in touch with your anger, with your sadness, and with your fear. And so this is really key to becoming a mature human being who takes responsibility for their own experience and doesn't try and blame other people, doesn't get involved in the drama, understands that each one of us is doing a process of being a human being, and each person is where they are. That's not excusing any behaviour. People just do what they know, and if something stops them feeling bad, they'll carry on doing it, no matter how unhealthy that is, until there comes a time when there's a bigger lesson comes along. So it's letting go of other people as well and just focusing on yourself, because I am the only person I can change. I can share information with other people, I can share tools with other people, and it's up to them whether they want to do the process or not. And again, this can be very difficult, especially in our own family, which is where it all begins, and also when other people have influence in our lives, which again, at the moment, we are seeing that how other people have control over what we do and how that makes us feel, and is that healthy, is that appropriate? Okay, so this process shows up very specifically in the Mayan calendar, and I had no awareness of this until it was the right time for me. So again, it's knowing that there is a plan. Astrology and the Mayan calendar help you see that. So in terms of shaping our destiny, they're very useful tools to learn. And you don't need to know everything, and you don't need to try and learn everything at once either. There are people out there who you will be attracted to in your circle who have knowledge, and they will be perfect for where you are on your path. Because remember, as a holographic program, if you like, as a template, as a archetype, we always connect to the knowledge, the information that we need at the perfect time, and the people that we need to meet who are already written into our plan in this lifetime. What can hold us back at times is this old conditioning, is this old programming around our old story, so that sometimes we may not be open to it. Sometimes we may want to stay in our comfort zone. Sometimes we may be in a position where we have to do something else. We have to keep repeating an old pattern because we're not quite done with it yet. And all of this can be tricky to navigate. It can be paradoxical at times as well. So, but the more that we start to do it, the more that we understand this. And this is what this trip is all about. It's experiential. You can't learn it all from a book. You're here to do the process as an individual, as part of this human evolution process that's going on at the moment. So key things that come up initially are often around old familiar patterns, and having the courage as well to speak out at times, to challenge other people's opinions, and just to know what that creates. And again, that can be frustrating at times. We have to do it so many times in order to keep trying things out, because this is what I offer you, is we're here as conscious creators now. We've been unconscious creators to a large extent, and now is a time for us to really understand what outcomes are created by our choices. We've come in with a lot of the game plans already done. We didn't have a choice around that actually in being here whilst we were here. I offer you that we did have a choice before we came, and in order to do this process, we had to forget that we know what the process is. We have to remember again. So just to go over that again. So start with the end in mind. Choose to open your heart. Choose to do whatever it takes to create this amazing potential life that you can have, and let go of trying to plan it in too much detail, because where we are when we begin the journey, or in each stage of the journey, we don't know what we don't know. The universe that we are a part of has a limitless plan. Limitless. And so the more that we surrender to that, and the more that we become proactive with examining our own personal belief system that we have learned as a child, the more that we can come into a space of realizing our own limiting beliefs and what they've created. So again, using the holographic framework, the easiest way to see ourselves, which is why we're here, is to see what's outside of us, what's reflected back to us. And so we see the inside of us, our belief system, our cosmic code, if you like, and we're projecting that out onto the world. So the easiest way to see where we actually are on our path, not where we think we are, but where we actually are on our path, is to see what's playing out on our world game plan on the stage. So we have a shared game plan. And so, you know, we're on this playground, planet Earth, and we have some things that we see in a very similar way to other people. Slight differences, because again, each one of us is seeing everything on the outside through a lens that we have, a template, an interface. Anything that's coming in goes in through our eyes or through our senses and is filtered. So the map that we make of that, of how the world is our own personal map. This is using neuro-linguistic programming terminology. Okay, but the map is not the territory, it's not the truth, it's how we have personally interpreted the truth based on our own life experience, based on our own understanding of the world up to now. And that is key. Each one of us has our own personal viewpoints on that. So one of the key tools to learn is psychology around the theories of how our minds work, and in particular NLP goes to a deeper level, and I'm not talking about how to manipulate people and control them. I'm talking about, which is a lot of NLP and how it's used in the world today, I'm talking about how to understand that each one of us has what is called a meta program. We have a program that is running us in terms of our mindset. It has been programmed in terms of our environment, our culture, the people who nurtured us in whatever way, who educated us in whatever way, and also on a biological level, our genes. So we come with a program from our ancestors, and all of this is wired into our physiology. So again, if you want to expand your awareness, it's key to understand this. How have I become who I am in terms of my personality? Really, really key to understand this process. Because if we don't understand the process, then how can we do it? That's key. Okay, so again, just to summarize, so in order to see yourself, look at what is going on in your life on a day-to-day basis, because you see your inside reflected outside of you. And so everything that you love in your life that is happening, you can really understand, how did I create that? How did I consciously create that? Where did that come from? What did I do? Because that wants to be expanded, and anything that makes you feel really good in a healthy way without taking any mind altering or chemistry altering stuff and putting it into you, just a natural state of being, a natural state of joy. Just like when we were children, playing out in the woods. That's it. That's the key. What creates joy for me in a natural, healthy way? I want to expand more of that. And what doesn't create that, what doesn't feel good, what makes me feel stressed, angry, anxious, sad. Our body is wired to show us what does not serve us, and our body is wired to trigger emotion at different levels of intensity. So again, this is key to understanding that we are wired to do that. And sometimes we are stuck in an old story, as in we're still getting triggered, but this is an old story that we can release. There isn't actually a danger there now. It's simply an old story repeating. So we can clear it if we know how to. So again, this goes back to the biology and the psychology and understanding, how can I heal these old stories so they're not appearing on the outside in the same way. And what I offer you is, this began in our childhood with these key archetypal patterns, because that's what we came here to learn about. That's what we came here to become masters of, and to understand what created them and how we can let go of them personally. So that requires healing, how to heal the emotional mind, and how to become clear of post-traumatic stress, which we all have because of everything that's gone before in our family cycles and ancestral patterns. And then how to stop doing anything that creates unhealthy, toxic relationship for us now. Taking the small steps every day. This is key. So again, what I offer you is, every day we are repeating our childhood experiences. We are repeating our personal history. We are repeating our generational history every day. And the intention of the universe is so we can learn from that, so we can stop doing that, so we can be solution focused. You cannot do this on a purely intellectual basis. You cannot do it. And if you understand how your body is wired with the emotional mind, you will understand why. So again, to be proactive, to be a conscious creator, it is essential to know how to do this process. Again, you don't have to become an expert overnight. I've been doing this process for 13 years, and if I can do it, you can do it. Anyone can do it if they have sufficient intellect and discipline and courage to want to do this process. You need to do it on a daily basis. Initially, if you have big past stories, you need to do a lot of it to begin with, to start to get clear of these programs. The more that you do it, the clearer you will become. And you will see the outside change because you're changing the inside. And you are creating a framework within yourself where you are ready to heal, where you are ready to be your own healer, where you are ready to connect to source, higher self, however you see that, the divine. We are the divine embodied. We have all our answers for ourselves. They're all in there. Everything that we see as a problem is the solution. So whenever we get triggered, we can follow the cookie trail back, because it's always something that happened in our childhood that created that trigger. We are wired to know what our trauma is. Many of us have overridden our emotional sat-nav in order to do things that do not serve us, in order to do things that keep us stuck in an old repeating pattern. So it's essential that we start to really work with this now. Otherwise, we're stuck on this labyrinth, which we can see on the world stage. Using a psychological term, projection. Again, depending on where people are on their path, they use terminology in a different way. And generally speaking, again, Google this, do your own research. The term in psychological circles, generally speaking, around projection, often means that when we have an issue with somebody, we are projecting our own personal stuff onto them. So, for example, if somebody is doing a behaviour that might be around what we call a shadow experience, so something that isn't respectful and loving, for example, then what is offered is, rather than focusing on that person and their behaviour, what is it highlighting around our behaviour? In my understanding and experience, there are aspects of that from time to time. And of course, we all have different behaviours going on. We are all here to understand and mature if we choose. This can also be used in a limiting way as gaslighting. And again, if you've not come across that term, please Google it, in terms of narcissistic relationship. So somebody can, instead of owning their behaviour, so for example, around abusive behaviour, controlling behaviour, instead of taking responsibility for that behaviour, they may turn that around back onto the person who is calling that behaviour out. And that's gaslighting. So trying to shift the focus onto the other person. And so again, this is complex stuff and something that we have to explore through experience rather than an intellectual concept again. Often people are stuck in intellectual concepts and are not actually doing their own personal healing work. Anybody who's working within a healing framework as a facilitator can be doing a healing process, can be under supervision, for example, and that doesn't mean that they are consciously aware of what their own stuff is, though. So again, if you choose to work with somebody as a facilitator in your process, I advise that you ask them if they're doing their own personal healing work, and that is not simply intellectual supervision, okay, because that is not doing this process. If you are doing this process and your facilitator is not, then it's at odds with where you are on your path. In a bigger picture, projection is also, in my belief and understanding, a projection of our past. So if we have somebody in our circle and they are doing a particular behaviour, it does not mean that we have done that behaviour. It means that we have experienced that behaviour with other people in our past. And that is why it's coming up again. And it's coming up again to be explored, and we're at a choice point of what we want to do with that in our conscious creation process. So again, this is where other frameworks are very useful, astrology and cosmology, the Mayan, because the concepts, the archetypes, the process is embedded in these structures to bring this to light. So this goes very deep within these structures. So again, going back to the holograph, we are projecting ourselves out onto the world. These stories every day are simply repeats of our childhood story, maybe in a different geographic location, with different people. And so again, we're getting to revisit them, and we're doing a maturation process. We can choose to do a maturation process so that we understand how these situations, how these storylines have come into being, and then how we can actively work with them to release them. Now, there are lots of different frameworks in NLP structures that I have explored in doing my training, and over time that are useful. So for example, becoming assertive is key to a people pleaser, understanding why we people please and how that plays out, and is that useful, exploring all these different options. We can go through processes that are very powerful using these frameworks, and again, they will work up to a certain degree in my experience. However, healing our own personal past story creates a whole different level of being the human being. In terms of our personal story, it's key that we record it. I use the term Book of Shadows. It's a manual for yourself. And just like the Mayan 260-day cycle and all their other calendars has been mapped for thousands of years. And so again, in terms of astrology, the Babylonians mapped, observed thousands and thousands of years of data in order to make these calendars. This is really, really significant. So we've already got that work done for us, and I offer you, we were a part of that process, which is why we're back here at this time. So we've got that amazing framework to work with. And again, it's about remembering. And we've got that in there on a very deep level in our DNA, right back to the beginning of time. What we need to do in this lifetime is to map our personal patterns and map our codes, and to have this manual for ourselves. So you may want to do a blog, which is what I did, and my blog primarily is for me. flowwithjo.com is for me. When I started doing it, I had to learn lots of things in order to do it, and now it teaches me. So again, Facebook, it comes up with memories. It's really important to record, because you're bringing the inside outside in whatever way you do that. If you do it in a blog, if you do it in Facebook, then there will be a timely reminder will come up for you. If you write it in a book that has no electronic signature, it's not going to come up in the same way. That does not mean it's not of value, however, and I do a combination of all of these things. Find what works for you, but know that if you do a blog, then that will come up as your own teaching process. I also record things using emails, for example. So again, I've got access to folders, I've got ebooks, I've got records. So very important for conscious awareness, because as these things come up, you've got a record. And how our emotional mind works is often it doesn't record things that are an emotional trauma on a conscious level. It will avoid it to begin with. Again, you know, to begin with, you're doing a lot of work around rewiring the fear of fear, okay? Because the emotional mind is wired to keep us happy and joyful, and we'll do lots of illogical things that are very unhealthy for us to begin with, which can be difficult to navigate in the beginning, because we'll go down the old pathways, literally the neural pathways. So if you have a reference for yourself, then that can help you remember times when it happened before. So for example, to record this time of year, what happened to you, is great for conscious awareness. Again, you have to have the courage to look at what we call the dark side of yourself, your own demons, the painful bits, because that's where the alchemy is. That's where the old story is. That's what needs to be transformed. So you need to be able to have the courage to look at that and to start to craft for yourself a resilience. And as you go through this process, you will realize that to feel all these feelings, you do not die. And you're rewiring your emotional mind, you're rewiring your ego, you're doing a maturation process for yourself, where you are healing your inner child, even if in the beginning it's just about letting that child have a voice. And you're creating a self-existing structure, because you're learning to do this for yourself. It's not dependent on somebody else. You're creating a trust process with yourself, and that is the key. As you start to expand this structure, your inner child will become more trusting of yourself, and this works on every level. Self-trust, all the times that we have been told an untruth, that we are challenging something that's going on with adults, that is an untruth. This is very key to this time. So we're rebuilding our confidence. We're rebuilding our trust in ourselves. And this has to come from healing the times when we've experienced the opposite of that. You can't add this to yourself. This is, again, a very key understanding. This is about letting go of times in the past where we have experienced trauma. And again, once we really understand this concept and go deeper and deeper, we understand how this structure works. And often what we're offered in people who aren't doing this healing process is they're focusing on the positive, they're focusing on avoidance strategies, they're focusing on shifting your state. Why shift your state? If you're feeling sad, there's a reason for it. If you're feeling angry, there's a reason for it. It's time to go into understanding what that is, what created it, healing it, stopping doing it. That's the key. So timelines are key. Having your own book of shadows where you record, for example, this is what triggers me. And then going deeper. So again, as you start this process, what's triggering me today? Who is triggering me today? What circumstance, what event, what's the environment? And becoming an expert on what your triggers are. If it's a who, what does this remind me of? Is it the same person? So is it a family member that's always triggered me? Or is it somebody new showing up in my circle who reminds me of that person? So again, you're training your mind to become consciously aware. And this is very important as a first step in awareness about what makes me tick. So everything happens at the right time, at specific times of year. Again, in the bigger cosmology, there is always a very significant reason for that. Nothing is random. Everything has a reason, has a season. And the paradox is that we're not limited either to these structures in a limiting way. The paradox is the more that we go into shaping our destiny, we change the outcome. So again, this is very powerful concepts of quantum physics, is understanding that intention is everything. Intention to heal, intention to create the most amazing adventure in this lifetime is totally what Blue Hand is about, shaping our destiny, being the avatar. What we have to do is learn the tools, learn the process to do that on every level. In order to be a wise human being, we have to do this alchemical process of healing our shadow. When we understand this process on a deep level, it makes perfect sense. At the moment, the framework on planet Earth is not in alignment with this. So people who have positions of power are not generally doing this process at all. They have acquired power through other means. And generally the key focus is around money, it's around status, it's around materialism. And it is not in attunement with conscious ways of being a human being. So we can see that very clearly on the planet as to repeating patterns, being stuck, seeing the effect that that's having on the planet, on human beings, on all beings, and on Mother Earth. And then understanding where that's come from. At this time, everything is aligned in terms of the astrology and the cosmology for that to shift now. and really understanding that in order for the outside to change, the inside has to change for each human being is very important. So again, my understanding is everything is perfectly aligned, perfectly designed. It is not about being passive if you want to be a conscious creator. It's about being very disciplined about doing your work every day so that you work on all these different levels. You work on what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. This is so key to the cosmology framework of going beyond this conditioned mindset. And each one of us has our own perfectly aligned plan to progress as much as we wish. We've got free will to do that. So it's entirely up to the individual as to what level of the game do I want to play at. And every person is perfectly placed, perfectly aligned with the game plan. So again, the more that we let go of fear, the more that we let go of trying to control other people and just keep focusing on ourselves, the more that we come into a personal alignment, and the more that we can access the source code, and the more that we can be the change that we want to see in the world. And that is it, really. You know, again, it's just bringing it back to us as an individual and being empowered, being courageous, being ready to heal, being the warrior of the heart. In part 2, I will explain how this works with the Mayan Wavespell process, but just to give a summary in this. So the evolutionary process is to become conscious, also known as awake, to this process of human evolution. So that's step 1, if you like. We become conscious, we become awake, we become aware on an intellectual level that something needs to change now on planet Earth. Going deeper than that, we become aware that we are getting triggered. And so what's getting on my nerves? What are my survival mechanisms in relationships? Becoming personally, consciously aware of what I do, how I work, how I interact with other people, how I do the interface. Where is my energy flowing? Where is my energy not flowing? Instead of thinking, coming into feeling, how am I feeling in my body? What's going on in my body? So again, this is key, because if you're still running a Western medical model, then this does not fit with this template, okay? So this is an Eastern model. This is a Indigenous people model of mind, body, and spirit. So it's showing, it's revealing in the body where our energy is stuck, and then going into a holistic approach around what is creating that way of being. So, for example, Louise Hay, she was sort of the big milestone around bringing that over from the East. Acupuncture, meridian lines, energy healing, Reiki, emotional freedom technique, quantum touch, so on and so on. Okay, so understanding that there is a lot more going on, that in the human being there is a whole different structure to what we've been educated in the Western medical model and going beyond that. This is an essential part of this process. Do I love my body? Mirror work. Do I love the skin that I'm in? How do I see myself? How have I come to see myself? Going deeper. What are my repeating patterns in my life today? How long have they been going on for? What's constantly a struggle? What is constantly a repeating pattern? How am I in toxic relationship with other people, with my job, for example, with my home, with my finances, with my food, with my day-to-day existence? And how has that shown up in my family before? What pattern am I repeating now? The next step is starting to transform these patterns using frameworks. Emotional freedom technique is absolutely key. I do not know of any other framework that does this in the way that I have learned how to do it around rewiring the emotional mind. This is absolutely essential to clearing off these old trauma patterns and coming into a healthy state of being, as well as changing lifestyle, changing food, educating oneself, learning to be one's own holistic therapist, and taking radical responsibility for one's own health through asking questions and personal discovery, doing personal research. As we rewire the shadow, we literally change our crystal light body. We change our personal Merkaba, and so we activate our receiver to connect to the galactic center, to source, to the divine, whatever framework you wish to use. In terms of the Mayan, again in part 2, I will explain this in a very specific way as to the understanding and the framework that comes with this, and why it's essential to do this process if you want to become aligned with the source code. And at this time, it's extremely powerful. So again, just to summarize, we have come into this human body which has a holographic pattern. And the holographic pattern that it's holding is holding huge distortions around truth, around health, because of thousands of years of a framework, a conditioned mindset that is not healthy for human beings, is disempowering for human beings, is aligned with dishonesty and codependent patterns. We all have this in our holograph today. That's what I offer you. Very few people on the planet will not have it because they have not been contaminated, if you like, by aggressive cultures and who have enforced their way of being on other beings. That's what we're dealing with. There will still be some human beings out there, I guess, I don't know, on a personal level, that have not had as much contamination in terms of cultural influence and enforcement. And so what we're seeing now is the majority of the planets are creating a holograph on the outside that is full of fear, is full of distortion, and we can see exactly what the fears are if we go deeper, because they're manifesting right now. We can see them. And again, I offer you, that's why it's so powerful at this time, because there's a huge transition happening. And again, it's really key for the individual to be proactive. And if you want to change the world as a planetary server, change yourself and learn how to do this process and start doing it. If you'd like to know more about this process, if you'd like to know more about personal code and how to work with it, and please do get in touch with me. My blog is flowwithjo.com. If you want to see this in the Mayan framework, then it will be a similar version to this, but it will be using the Mayan framework and codes. And so please check out part 2. Lots of love to you on your journey and your process.